Welcome to another great show of APN TV Media, the Author Publisher Network. Today we have a returning author. She's dynamic and author, writer, a teacher. I would say what she developed in her book titled Reversed, a Memoir, as an entrepreneur in the educational arena. So I tell you what, her name is Lois Letchford as returning author. But I tell you what, let's get this party started, and I'll see you in a few moments. How about that? Welcome back. Welcome back. Yes, you know what's funny is that I was thinking about that reverse a memoir. So I got a pretty much a nice and detailed background from Lois Letchford when she was first on the show. But here we had to have her back because she is very dynamic. I mean, what she'll share with us about I think it's dyslexia or in a way of learning that she reversed the whole order of things in the educational field. But I'm going to have her open the door. So, hey, Lois, are you here?
I am here. Thank you for having me back.
Glad to have you back. I didn't know how to explain that again because, I'm starting to look more towards you as an entrepreneur in this field because it's very unique. You discovered something in the educational world that can help people with learning disabilities.
Yes, that's right. Well, actually, I don't believe I've discovered anything because it's all there in the literature. I just used it.
Well, that's still part of discovery. If anything that you can read, and you can read into and make something productive out of it, especially positive,
Yes.
Then you create a discovery of something that somebody didn't even know.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so I want to say, biblically, when they say you read something in the Proverbs, it's not there before you read it again, and then you see something, it's there all the time, but it has to be brought out to light. It has to be brought out to a surface. And you did just that, and you helped, and I believe that you're continuing to help a lot of people, a lot of children, as well as teenagers. But you know what? The first thing before I continue with this part of the, about the educational part of the book, which is titled Reversed a Memoir. Tell us all a little bit about yourself.
I am now 60 years old, over 60 years old, and I grew up with a learning disability, but was totally unaware that it had a label. I just thought I wasn't very smart. So that was my background, and it took me a long time to come to love reading. And when I had my son, my second son struggled with reading enormously. And I'll put this into a context in that he had ear infections from 8 to 18 months, and it impacts the hearing, it impacts brain growth, and it impacts language development. And it was when he went to school, he failed. He came out of grade 1 thinking he wasn't very smart, and the testing showed he wasn't very smart. And I'll never forget the day he said to me, Mummy, I'm not very good at things. So that was the start of the story. And then, as you know, last year he achieved a PhD from Oxford in applied mathematics.
Wow. Wait a minute. He did achieve it this time. I mean,
yes.
Oh, so he's a graduate.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Congratulations. Oh my God.
Yes.
Incredible. Yes. Congratulations. And all this started was just with an ear infection, huh?
Yes.
And the ear infection caused the mishap of a disability to defect his learning ability in the educational field. Okay,
Mr.
so
Hill?
Yes, go ahead.
The ear infections are far more common than people realize, and it impacts a child's ability to hear language at a crucial time when their brain is learning and growing. And that's why dealing with them is so important. And then as they come out of the ear infection, their hearing is not perfect. And that also impacts learning and language. And then for my son Nicholas's case, it's that I was dyslexic or have a learning disability. And so you've got a combination of the hereditary and the ear infections, which really impacted that early learning of his.
Wow. Well, you know, it's funny you mentioned that. I mean, funny, but not funny. But you mentioned your disability in the learning field too at one point in time.
Yes.
Well, then
Yeah.
I want to start off with this one at this moment. How did you achieve? Because you're a teacher now, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. I've been a teacher for a long time. I've actually now just an author and speaker, and I tutor after schools. So I'm not teaching full time anymore.
Yes, but you're still teaching. You're tutoring.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And you wrote a book, but before that
Yes.
you were a teacher. So you're still going to always be. That's the gift
Yes.
that you were given. You will always be a teacher, an educator.
Yes.
And the thing is, how did you were able to come out of it? How did you before you passed down this gifted ability, a positive ability for others to come out of it? How were you able to come out of it?
A lot of it was just hard slog. I just worked very, very hard all the time for very average results. That explains how I got through it. But it was during one of these sessions when I was doing anatomy that one of the professors brought out a bunch of bones, and you actually started to touch them. And my mind went, wow! And suddenly I could remember everything he said because I could connect, and the teaching, the way he taught really impacted the way I learned. So when my son was struggling, I went back to that positive experience of teaching and learning that made me say, I can do things differently. But, you know, going back to your question of how I did it, it was hard slog until I became a reader. And what happened was I remember reading the book, The Joy Luck Club. And I was in a book group and I just fell in love with that book and couldn't put it down. And I've been reading ever since. So falling in love with reading was a huge part of becoming an excellent reader. Otherwise, I would do every reading I could and would, and scientific reading was easier than reading of novels.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Reading description was far harder than reading dialogue. And if a book was descripting at the beginning, it would lose me. All of those little things helped.
Okay, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into the book, and then I'm going to go back to some questionnaires concerning your son. Tell us just a little bit. Yeah, matter of fact, tell us a little bit about the book.
The book follows.
Yes.
The book follows his journey because my son has had quite an extraordinary life in that we moved to Oxford when he was 7. My husband is a professor and he had study leave, and we moved to Oxford, and that's where I took Nicholas on. And that's where I was able to evaluate the teaching method and see Nicholas in a different light. He was in his second grade. First grade he failed, so we were in Oxford in second grade. And that's where I was able to really think, what else do I have to do? And I started writing poems. And the poetry was fantastic, but it was the poetry that tapped into his imagination and into a love of learning that was absolutely critical to his success. So that was the start. And then when we went back to Australia, you know, my son Nicholas, when we were doing this study, we were learning about the changing map of the world, and he asked questions I could not answer. And I went back to the diagnostician who had tested him, and I said, Nicholas has asked these fantastic questions. She stood there, put her hands on her hips and said, well, he's the worst child I've seen in 20 years of teaching. And you notice I still struggle to say those words. And that was the driver for saying I have to keep changing it, keep changing the teaching. And once I did that, he got it. But when he's back in the classroom in grade 2 and grade 3, the classroom teachers were fantastic, accommodated him, and he loved school from that time on. And that's the start. But because Nicholas really was so low with language, we needed to have this extra additional learning and a different focus. Because if I just focused on letters and sounds, he would not have understood where those words and letters were coming from.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Well, that was I was wondering, because one of the questions here was what was it like to send your son to school each day, knowing that he couldn't do the work.
In grade 1, horrific. And it's got even worse, because Nicholas is now 30, and I spoke to him last year when I was with him, because he's now living in England. And I asked him about his early learning, and my son, with a PhD, who was articulate and confident, cried. And when I saw him doing that, I thought I did a terrible thing. I should have taken him out of school in grade 1 and never let him face that failure. Terrible.
Is this the son? Is this the same son that has the PhD, or is it two different?
That's the son I'm talking about. The son with a PhD crying over his first grade of school.
Wow. So, but he eventually, you know what, actually, I'm going to jump it up a little bit. Did he go into a special education or I forgot, what do you call it up there? What do you call up there, for disability?
Special education or a specialized type?
Yeah, I forgot what it was called. They have it here. But yes, a special education program. I say it that way. Different states is different. Locations have different names, but it's still all the same. It's still special education, special ed. When did he start going into there, or did he ever go into special ed?
He had a reading teacher who would take him out of the regular classroom, but all of the time he stayed in the regular classroom. Okay. So let's say he went to second, third grade. He still had to, he stayed in one of those classes. He had to stay in that particular class. So he pretty much grew up in that classroom. Second grade teacher was brilliant, and his third grade teacher he loved. And those classroom teachers were fantastic. They helped him grow and learn. The problems I had were with the reading teacher, who struggled with him. And that's another story. But the classroom teachers were fantastic.
Oh, wow. Oh.
Yes. And it gives an idea of how we want to work with these children too, because the third grade teacher did a lot of literature, and she would read a chapter every day to her students of a book. She wouldn't go on, and the children would beg her every day, read us another chapter, read another chapter, and she wouldn't. And so he would come home and say, Mrs. So-and-so, Mrs. Raspaskovsky's reading this book to us. And he knew what was going on in the book. And one day, the reading teacher came and took him out of the class when the teacher was reading the story. And he came home that afternoon and cried, because he said to me, I missed the best part of the story.
Really?
Yes.
You know what? I'll tell you what. We're going to get back into that moment, because I want to see where the reverse, the switch came at that moment when he enjoyed that story. But you know what? Everybody, we'll be right back after this.
Is this going okay?
Yes, yes. Welcome back. Welcome back. What was going on? We're going to our break, but there was something that was very dynamic, and that I wanted to ask within that moment was the fact that Lois's son, who had a learning disability, which started with the ear infection. And once it started with the ear infection, it progressed to a phenomenon within his disability that his education started reversing, where he became a slow learner. Now, him being able to enjoy reading. Now, Lois, that enjoy reading, okay? The enjoy reading. Is this during second grade?
Second and third grade.
Second and third grade. But this is still with the learning disability, is that correct?
Oh, the learning disability never goes away. You just find ways around it.
Okay, did he find, he enjoyed, but what I'm getting at, did he find a way around it, or he was still have a heart, he loved to read, but how about this? Did the teacher understand how bad off was his disability?
Yes, I think they did. In early years, they did.
Okay, and he's reading a book, or they're reading to him?
They're reading to him. She's reading to the class.
Okay, but he understood it when she was reading to him.
Yes, understood everything.
Okay, so what about when he was he able to read a story himself?
By the middle of second grade, yes. Middle of second grade is when he started to read independently.
So where's the disability, the learning disorder come in at? That's what I'm trying to get at. Where's the learning disorder come at that age? I mean, if he's able to comprehend what the teacher's saying and comprehend if he's reading it, where's the mystery at? That's what I'm trying to find out. Where was it at?
The mystery, that's an interesting question, because it's the way we teach, and my teaching in the 6 months prior had really given him the letters and the sounds. And then another component is the sight words that children learn, and the sight words are abstract words.
You were teaching them back then?
Yep.
Oh, yep. So you were teaching them when he was in first and second grade?
Second grade, not first grade.
Okay, second grade. Okay, then let's back it up just a little bit here. Let's go into first grade, because that's where I was saying there was a gap missing, and I wanted to make sure that our readers and viewers understand the prolifics of what's going on. In the first grade, he had a hard time comprehending when the teacher tells a story, or did he have a hard time comprehending when he was reading?
In first grade, he couldn't read anything. He left first grade reading 10 words. The teacher shouted at him all year. He withdrew. He sat at his desk and wished he could disappear. First grade was a disaster.
Okay, now I understand that, because that's where when you withdraw, you go and start drawing or doodling, anything, because you can't be able to comprehend certain things. Yeah. And okay, I can understand that part. So now he's withdrawn, and this is where you come in.
Yes.
How did you come in to discover the situation that happened to your son?
Which one, the first grade one or the second grade son?
Which one was first? Whichever.
First grade. First grade was just awful, and I didn't know it was so bad. I knew it was bad, but I didn't know it was so horrific. And it's still quite distressing now that I left him in class for so long.
Wow, just in the first grade?
Yeah.
Okay, so the teacher didn't. So how did you discover it that the teacher, because you've written a book about it, okay? Yeah. Reverse a memoir. So the teacher, okay, the teacher didn't realize how complicated things were for him. Or she should have, because he was at failure already.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Now when and how were you able to step in that picture? Did you do it from home?
We withdrew him from school for 6 months.
Okay, there we go. Okay.
Yep.
Now, what was your reason for withdrawing him from school?
My
Because
husband,
discouragement?
well, my husband had a study leave for 6 months, so it was an opportunity to go to a new place, to take him out of school and not put him in school for 6 months. In fact, I asked him if he wanted to go to school in this new place, and I watched the blood drop from his face, and he just went white.
So
and I thought, no, I can't do that.
So this is homeschooling now.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So this is homeschooling. What? How? On homeschooling? When was this in homeschooling? Like, what year?
1995. The last 6 months of 1995.
1995.
Yep. Well, my son is 30 now.
Wow, time fly by. I'm just trying to wonder, when the time they had homeschooling. That's what I was wondering. When was homeschooling was really taking effect? I'm going, man, and I'm like, okay, we'll stay with that. Then, so while you were homeschooling, there had to be a discovery somewhere as you were teaching, or there was a point in your in your education on discovering. So how did you discover it out of your son in order to reverse it?
I started with failure, and the failure gets so bad you think, I can't do this. And my mother-in-law was with us, with our family at the time, and she said, Lois, make learning fun. And that was the moment I thought, I can't keep going with this failure because he can't do it. He can't do it. He can't do it. So I changed it and I started to write poetry. And with writing simple poetry, you're looking at the vowel sounds and the consonants, but you're also tapping into his curiosity and you're creating pictures from words, which was critical. And on top of that, we're having a lot of fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, then I'm gonna do this. Explain to us about reverse a memoir. What type of pathway would that book take for those that in the educational field?
People have written to me and said, I read it first as an inspirational story. Then I went back and it's a manual. And I went back again hunting for more details. That's why you read reverse. It becomes a manual. What else do I have to do to help my child learn to read?
Very good. Very good. Yes, very good. I was actually looking at that myself as a manual. I had it up on the screen here. And that was, I was wondering about the educational part. The memoir actually became a manual on an evolution.
Yes.
From a transformation type evolution, from being disabled to becoming. I never thought about a word. How do you say that when you come out of a disability like that?
That's a good question. That's a good question.
Is there even a word for it? Because he's a scholar now. As a matter of fact, professor is. And what is he, professor now?
No, he's a doctor, but
he's a doctor.
Professor is, well, the title is doctor, but it's a doctor of applied mathematics.
Wow, of mathematics, of all things, mathematics. That's incredible. That is incredible. And let me share this other question here. Let me go with this one. Okay. Did you achieve? You know what? I don't even want to get to that question yet. I want to get to the your story. Your story is set on 3 continents. How did each continent contribute to your son's success? Different locations. How did that happen?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Well, as I said, my husband's a professor, and we had that 6 months in Oxford. And that's where he learned that he could learn, and learning to read was so exciting. And that you can never discount. And so when we returned to Australia, that's where he learned that he could learn. I learned to read, rather. Sorry. One was learn to learn, and the second, we continue the process, and he learns to read, and he's in the regular classroom. Now, this is the interesting part of the story. When he was in 5th grade, we moved to Lubbock, Texas, because my husband had offered a job in Lubbock, Texas.
Okay.
He's 2 years behind. Nicholas is 11 in the 5th grade and reading on the 3rd grade reading level, making progress every year, but behind. Now, do you know where Lubbock, Texas is?
No. Actually, I know where San Antonio, Texas. Well, I was at basic training in the military, at Lackland Air Force Base. But no. How far is it from there in real life?
About 8 hours. Amarillo. Do you know Amarillo?
Yes.
Yes, it's 2 hours south of Amarillo. But you know the ground, it's flat, it's brown, it goes on forever. Lubbock, Texas changed his life.
Well, I think the whole entire driving from one end of Texas to the other is a life-changing experience. That's like a 2-day journey.
Yes.
That's crazy. That's woo. I think, isn't that one of the largest states in the United States?
Yes, it is. Yes. Yeah.
You're talking about all desert. I don't even know how you can communicate from one city to the other.
Well, this is the positive of living in Lubbock, because you drive forever. The libraries were filled. The libraries were filled with books on CD. So when you drive for miles, what do? We listened to a book everywhere. And if you've got a problem with language, how do you get better? You listen to books and your mind fills with the language that you need.
Very good. That was the next question I asked about. Traveling to different continents, overseas, Australia, England, here, Texas, New York. The language changed. Was there a language? I know I'm throwing this out there, but it is part of it. Was the dialect, became a language barrier, or did it help unwind something mentally to allow him to be able to readjust on how to read or to comprehend?
That's a really good question, because he speaks with an Australian accent, and the others, the local accent is the West Texan accent. The West Texan kids wanted him to talk. In Australia, he was the lowest kid in the class. No one spoke to him. He's coping. But you go to West Texas, and everyone wants him to talk. And then on top of that, the teacher did a unit called Tall Tales. And she was telling the kids about tall tales. And Nicholas came home to me and said, my friend said, do you have kangaroos in your backyard? And he said, oh. And I said, Nicholas, you tell them, of course you do. And there's a koala up every tree. And what happened was Nicholas started to tell these tall tales to his colleagues. If you've got a problem with language and speech, you've got to practice. What's he doing? He's practicing. And what we found was Nicholas's huge sense of humour. The students would come to me and say, how did you get to America? Did you really get here on the back of a whale?
Oh, no.
Yes. So, that was part of the transformative experience that helped Nicholas, that would not have happened if we'd stayed in Australia.
Wow, very interesting.
Yes.
Very interesting.
Mm.
So
and the other part that happened that was interesting was in Australia, everyone is very happy that he's reading 20 minutes a night because the child has a learning disability. When we went to Texas, they had a program that basically Nicholas bought into. Nicholas said to me, my teacher said we've got to read a book and take a test. Nicholas read for 2 hours a night, 6 and 7 nights a week. If you have a problem and you've got to get better, how do you do it? By literally doing it. And that's what he did. And that's why Lubbock was so good for us.
Yeah. Very good.
I've heard tell that vipers only strike for defense against humans and rarely release their venom. Anyway, they're nocturnal. I think they'd rather be resting and looking for quiet and solitude. She wasn't sure where the ease with which she spoke all too quickly had come from, but she had, and looked just past him to the rustling from the tall grasses and beyond to the monastery, and questioned which creature lurked between those tall grasses.
Now, they say beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But what's often overlooked is that there's a dark stain just below the surface that's also visible.
Don't let the fact that I'm from a small southern town allow you to think that my congregation hasn't been through hell.
I didn't mean to upset you.
Yep, they're gonna see Trigger come and really want to kick y'all's ass. Y'all. She's a sleeper. Never gonna catch ya. Behold, folks! Nitrous. No offense. Figured you more like a horse and buggy type, bus pass kind of guy.
Do you know where you are?
Grandma's house.
I spent the last 7 years settled down, and what has it gotten me? I'm standing in a pool of blood on top of a stack of bodies.
You better dig yourself a hole, little man, because we're about to bury you in it.
All right?
Let's do this.
Gabe told me about your past. I want to know, where's that spark? That warrior?
Open the gates. Take in the death. Let them greet. Protect them. Metkatu.
Good morning, sunshine.
Another thing here is you teach when as a teacher, at a time for you as a teacher, did you teach reading, or what were you as a teacher of before?
I started my life as a physical education teacher. And when I had Nicholas, what happened was I found that teaching of reading was so exciting. Mm-hmm. And then I saw mistakes that the reading teacher made, which really worried me. And I went back and became a reading specialist. And when we lived in Lubbock, Texas, I got a job as the district reading specialist, teaching children who'd failed all reading programs. My first student there I met was 13 years old. He'd spent 4 years in a phonics-only reading program, and he came out non-reading. So I got to teach him. And he then graduated. He graduated high school, and college with an honours degree in communication. And that's where I really was able to try and practice. I had the best job in the world in Lubbock, Texas.
Wow, but okay, so that led you into teach reading, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so then then again, that became your curiosity and your passion for teaching about how to read or the proper way to read. There was something that ran through my mind when here's something, and I really would like to have your expert opinion about this because I'm a firm believer that because of this type of, when they have disability, learning disability in the educational field, for parents, and I have to say mothers are more harder in this than it is for the father or the father figure. But mothers are mostly, this day and age is 85%, I say, to 90% are the ones that's generally taking care of the children. Yes. And I'm sorry, the statistics, it is what it is. But in this field, when the mother, I'm going to say that, I'll just say parent, I'm going to keep it neutral, say parent, okay? Because it's realist in this. When they see the teacher, I'm not saying the kids now, the teacher, or they notice that the teacher makes a mistake, is there a way to, something that you could tell the mother in a way not be afraid they could speak up to the teacher? Because sometimes maybe the teacher, kids actually, when they get to a certain age and say they're in 4th, 5th grade, they hit 6th grade, they go to the junior high on a merit, on maybe say if you can get a D, you pass, which is not acceptable because you go all the way to college with to high school with a D. You won't even make it into college, but college will be frustrated because college generally goes from A to a B minus.
Yep.
C is just tolerable.
Yep.
Okay, so starting at an early age, you discovered it by you saw the teacher made a mistake.
Yeah.
A lot of people probably saw the teacher made a mistake and did not say anything. So who bears the burden is the child.
Yes.
And a child will go to the next grade on a merit, even though they're disabled in a disability educational field. You know what I'm saying? It ain't just special ed no more. It's a disability educational field that they are on a merit being passed on. I pass you because you can't. Because I had I raised a daughter who could not tell time.
Right.
And you even though she looked up on a clock, she could not tell time. And she went all the way to high school not being able to tell time. So we kept trying to work with her. I mean, she's doing great now. Okay. Yes. And like her sister has 2 kids now and everything. They're doing great. So that was I'm talking like 20, at least maybe 8 years ago when they graduated. But back then, what was disturbing is that they were being passed to the next grade with their education level. So you got this. You've got a child who's growing up to the next your age, but their education, learning ability kept declining while they're being passed to go up. So as they become 18, their educational level is of a 4th grade level. Yep. Do you see where I'm going at? They started out in kindergarten, 1st grade with an even level, okay? Yep. But all of a sudden, they were passed on, even though they're disabled. Disability says we're respective persons. Everybody's the same. But as you educate, everybody's still the same. Everybody's still disabled. Everybody still have an educational problem. And when they get up here to graduate, everybody's still here. But yet you're graduating up here at a level that you started when you were in the 1st grade because nobody spoke out. You see where I'm going with this?
I know exactly where you're going.
So is this something that we can share with the parents? And I'm sure that everybody, and a lot of you know about that when your children are disabled, have a disability, like the ear infection. They may not have told you about an ear infection help contribute to the disability. And your child is growing growing to a certain age, and as they're growing, you're knowing something is wrong, and to a point that you just let them do what they want to do because you can't help them.
What else can you do?
What else can you do? But suppose that you saw the mistake back then, or saw the mistake that the teacher made. I don't care what year bracket. It could be 4th, 5th grade, but you discovered they're being taught wrong.
Yeah.
What can you say to not just audience and readers, but the families, the parents that has discovered this, but are afraid to speak out, or being put down because the fact that they are not teachers, but they know something is wrong.
Something is wrong.
Yes, something is wrong.
Yeah. You are talking about my son. Is my light all right? You're talking about the son that could have been, my PhD son, that could have been if we had not left Australia in 1995, because that's exactly what they would have done to him. They would have said, your child is slow, he cannot learn. See, we've got the piece of paper that says he has a low IQ. That's what would have happened with my son. And that's why I wrote my book. What do you have to do as parents? You have to say, my child can learn to read, he can be taught. What are we going to do about it? I don't want my child in a program. I want a teacher who knows what they are doing, who can identify what my child can do, what they can't do, and fix the bit in between. Because what I have noticed with children who are failing in the Americas and in schools here, is that you go to IEP meetings and they say, we are teaching your child this, and this. We are doing our job. And that seems to satisfy them. The question they are not asking is, what is the child learning? Is the child progressing? And the answer is a simple yes or no. Is he progressing at the rate that he should be? If the answer is no, the only thing we can change is how we teach. We cannot change the child, we cannot change their background, but we can control how we teach.
Very good. Thank you so much. Thank you. And you know what? That was what I was looking for. It was called IEP.
Yes.
For that, the educational program, disability educational program, IEP.
Yeah, that's right.
And there's a lot of, and it's sad to see there's quite a bit of failure within it, but that's because it takes the parent and the teacher to come together, and if the teachers make a mistake that the parent is having a hard time trying to explain, the teacher make a mistake, sometimes the teacher may take it the wrong way, and we're not trying to say that. We're trying to say, look, it's for the child's benefit, let's come together, because mistakes are being made somehow, and they're being passed on into high school and to this new world. Just because they know how to write utilize a tablet or something doesn't mean that they're intelligent. It's just a way of life that they need, just like we did with the knob TVs, So you know what? I thank you for everything that you said. I still want you to come on again because we're being educated.
I'll talk to you anytime.
Lois Letchford, everybody. Lois Letchford. Yes. And her book is titled, and I'm validating it. Her book is titled "Reversed: A Memoir." I've enjoyed the book because it is a manual. It is more than just some type of autobiography or memoir of past, present, future, but it shows you and instructs you on how to come out of you and your children can come out of a negative situation and disability that turn to a positive educational motivation to succeed, just like your son who's a graduate now.
get sick and tired. This is the moment, this is the second, this is the hour, this is the year that you get your life transformed. You get your life transformed and motivated to do the right thing because you are what you think about all the time. You are what you think about all the time. You are what you eat also. Get your life together starting now. And right now, you can do it. I got your back. You are a champion. Leading my way to heaven. You are a champion.
Yes.
Okay, and a doctorate in mathematics.
Yes, and I thank every day for Lubbock, Texas, and for particularly the teachers in high school, every teacher, but particularly the mathematics teachers in high schools who helped him find his passion.
Very good, very good. Well, I'm glad that you came on the show. I'm glad to have you. I want to have you again, to come back again soon, very soon. So, and everybody, you know what? And I thank for all of you for being here. And that was extravagantly fun. I enjoyed myself, and I hope you did too. So, you know what? Looking forward to seeing you next week. Have a blessed night. Take care.
There's a place inside my mind unseen. Dreams of you and I that just can't be. But I can keep them safe and locked away inside. In a perfect world where I controlled it, give me your heart there and I would hold it. But I know that just can't be reality. But please, don't you wake my daydream, 'cause it's so real it seems. Maybe someday I'll get my head from the clouds, but for now I'll just daydream. If you said to jump, then I will do it. Right into the fire and walk straight through it. And if you knew, I bet that's just what you would say. I guess the only thing for me to do is never let you know just how I'm feeling, 'cause I don't want to know if you don't feel the same. It's a shame. Don't you wake my daydream, 'cause it's so real it seems. Maybe someday I'll get my head from the clouds, but for now I'll just daydream. 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 There's a place inside my mind unseen. Dreams of you and I that just can't be. But I can keep them safe and locked away inside. Inside. But don't you wake my daydream. Oh, so real it seems. Maybe someday I'll get my punctuate my daydream.